Hello and welcome to the Gavel. I am Terry Ikumi. Plenary has resumed in both chambers of the National Assembly, and a lot happened in just 2 days of sitting. Let's begin with a conclusion on the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. The National Assembly has finally passed the harmonized version of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, empowering INEC to determine the procedure for voting and transmission of results during an election. It also approved direct primaries for aspirants to all elective positions, which is still a contentious issue. Now, the adoption of the conference report marks the completion of the amendment of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill in the 9th National Assembly. Here's a report on the journey to the passage of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, which was fraught with tension, horse trading, and disagreements.
At the inception of the 9th Assembly, the Senate and House of Representatives promised to amend the country's electoral laws. There was a previous attempt by the 8th Assembly to amend the Electoral Act before the 2019 general elections. However, President Buhari refused to sign the bill into law on the premise that it was close to the 2019 general elections. Many Nigerians have yearned for the passage of this critical bill, hoping that it can sanitize the country's electoral system persistently plagued by violence, ballot box snatching, underage voting and cash for votes. The Senate and House committees on INEC began working on the legislation, requesting input from organizations and individuals on the bill. Public hearings were held and views collated. On July 15, 2021, the National Assembly passed the Electoral Act Amendment Bill on the final day of plenary before it proceeded on its annual recess. Days before the passage, reports swept the country of plans to expunge a clause from the bill which guaranteed electronic transmission of results, a critical aspect of elections. The Senate amended Clause 52, which gives INEC the discretion to introduce electronic voting as may be practicable.
The Commission may consider electronic transmission of results provided the national coverage is adjudged to be adequate and secure by the National Communication Commission (NCC) and approved by the National Assembly.
Clause 52(3), as amended by Senator Basi Akpan. Say aye. Those against say nay. The nays have it.
This amendment sharply split lawmakers, and the minority leader called for a division, the first in the 9th Assembly.
Mr. President, I still insist. We want Nigerians to know who has voted or not.
28.
The votes were cast and counted, and the majority voted to amend Clause 52 by empowering the NCC to determine the use of electronic means to transmit election results.
I vote no, just to allow INEC to do the best job for Nigeria. Thank you.
Mr. President, I stand on the side of the people, of Nigerians. I vote yes.
I categorically vote no against the amendment by distinguished Senator Albert.
Yes to electronic transmission of results, because that is what Nigerians want.
28 voted yes, those that supported the amendment. 52 senators voted no, they don't want the amendment. 28 of our colleagues, senators, are absent in different parts of the country doing some jobs for the Senate and the National Assembly. Nobody abstained. Total 108.
Today in Nigeria, I don't know the coverage.
In the House of Representatives, Clause 52 of the amendment bill caused a rowdy session. However, the lower chamber finally amended Clause 52, empowering INEC to decide on the best means to transmit election results. But 3 months later, on October 12, 2021, the Senate made a U-turn and gave INEC free rein to determine the procedure of transmission of results during elections.
Subordinating the authority of INEC to NCC and even to the National Assembly, to the Senate, for approval was a violation of the ground norm, and that is the Constitution.
The Senate also re-amended Clause 87, prescribing direct primaries for political parties. On November 9, 2021, the National Assembly passed the harmonized version of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, empowering INEC to determine the procedure for voting and transmission of results during an election. It also approved direct primaries for aspirants to all elective positions. The adoption of the conference report marks the completion of the amendment of the Electoral Act bill in the 9th Assembly. Going forward, the bill is to be transmitted to President Buhari with the expectation that he will give his assent early enough to allow INEC and political parties prepare for the 2023 general elections.
A journalist, Todwe Salem, who covers the House of Representatives for the Vanguard newspaper, has been reported dead after mysteriously disappearing for a month. The police say it is a case of hit and run, and the driver of the vehicle has been arrested. The Nigerian Union of Journalists, however, says while it appreciates the effort of the police in finding the corpse of Mr. Salem, it is not persuaded by the account of the police as it poses more questions than answers. The NUJ is urging the president to order for an independent inquiry into the tragic end of Mr. Todwe and also demanding an independent autopsy so as to allay the fears of thousands of journalists and citizens across the country. Now, the National Assembly had waded into the matter on Tuesday, mandating its relevant committees to liaise with heads of security agencies to unravel the mystery behind his disappearance. The House of Representatives resolved to summon the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory over what it described as deteriorating state of the nation's capital. Here's a report. On the 13th day of the mysterious disappearance of Todwe Salem, a journalist who covers the National Assembly for Vanguard newspaper, the Nigerian Union of Journalists marched to the police headquarters to submit a petition demanding that the Inspector General of Police should take up the case.
The magnitude of the disappearance demands for a high tactical, focused and coordinated unit under the office of the IGP.
The police from preliminary investigations believe they have a lead.
We've been able to trace where he visited when he left the National Assembly. We've been able to interact with a young lady who spent time with him that night. We have the records of the last calls he made. We have spoken to about 6 different persons whom he spoke to that night. And there are a lot of efforts behind the scene taking place.
The 43-year-old was last seen at a fuel station close to the force headquarters on Sunday, the 13th of October. His family and colleagues at the House of Representatives were in pain, as no contact regarding his whereabouts had been made with his family, with further increased concerns about his sudden disappearance.
Within the FCT, a journalist disappeared, and all we could come and say is that we're working on it. I feel very disappointed because we are traumatized. We're disappointed. We're worried. I'm appealing to the president of this country. I'm appealing to the IG of the Nigerian Police Force to help us. Todwe cannot just disappear.
He's an ace reporter who is always thirsty for news and for reports, but I've not seen him writing any story in Dayton. He's an easygoing journalist.
It's saddening and very troubling that such a brilliant, promising young man has been missing for the past 12 days with no trace of his whereabouts.
When plenary resumed in both chambers of the National Assembly after a 3-week break, the missing Vanguard journalist Todwe Salem was a concern for the lawmakers as they urged the security agencies to ensure that the mystery is unraveled.
Concerned that if the Senate, the highest lawmaking body in the country, intervenes in the matter, the police may be better persuaded to do more to get to the root of the matter to alleviate the anxiety of all concerned. The Senate therefore resolves to mandate the Inspector General of Police as a matter of urgency to direct a special investigation into the circumstances surrounding the whereabouts of the missing journalist, Todwe Salem.
The House notes that Mr. Todwe Henry Salem is a member of the House of Representatives Press Corps, and he reports for the Vanguard newspaper. The House aware that Salem reported for work at National Assembly premises on Wednesday, the 13th of October, and was last seen in Gariki district of FCT before his alleged disappearance same day. The House is further aware that his disappearance was immediately reported to the relevant security agencies as all efforts by both friends and family to reach him have been very abortive. The House worried that in spite of official effort by the leadership of the House to galvanize the security agencies appropriately resolving his disappearance, there has been no headway. The House further worried that this sudden disappearance is an extension of the deteriorating state of insecurity in the nation's capital and again questions the efficiency of the country's security operatives. The House is therefore concerned that if necessary measures are not put in place to curtail the indiscriminate disappearance of innocent Nigerians living in Abuja, the federal capital may soon become a breeding ground for kidnappers and bandits, hence the need for an urgent investigation. The House therefore resolved that all security agencies in Nigeria should urgently investigate his whereabouts. Secondly, that the committees on national security and intelligence, police, defense, and interior should interface with the service chiefs and other security agencies so as to find the missing Todo and report back to the House within 2 weeks.
48 hours later, that which was feared had happened. 43-year-old Todwe Salam had been found dead in Abuja. The police say he was killed by a hit-and-run driver at the ever-busy Mabushi Expressway in Abuja. And according to the police, the driver suspected to have been responsible has been arrested. Meanwhile, in a related motion on the state of infrastructure such as street lighting in the Federal Capital Territory, which makes it unsafe, the House of Representatives, following a motion by the Deputy Minority Leader, resolved to invite the Minister of the FCT for some explanation.
The dearth of infrastructure, the absence of street lights, the ones that are there that are not working, makes it impossible for our citizens to be secure. Somebody is kidnapped or somebody is missing from Gariki. Lecturers are kidnapped from their homes and schools are invaded. We are not looking for somebody who have taken money. We are looking for somebody who have hired the job who is not doing it or doing it. If he's doing it, let him explain.
Welcome back to the Gavel. The House of Representatives has passed the Harmonized Retirement Age for Teachers in Nigeria Bill 2021. The executive bill increases the retirement age for teachers from 60 to 65 years. The House adjourned for a week to allow its committees conclude the budget defense process, but the Senate sat on Wednesday. Here's how that went. During the 3-week suspension of plenary, several peculiar and downright tragic events occurred across the country.
A 21-story building...
To begin with, Senator Oluremi Tinubu drew the attention of the Senate to the tragedy of the collapsed building under construction in Ikoyi, Lagos, where at least 42 people were killed.
A 21-story building popularly referred to as 3 degrees towers collapsed, trapping workers and several others. In the search and rescue effort that have since ensued, 15 survivors were rescued from the rubble, and 44 persons, including the owner of the building, confirmed dead. This is a disaster of epic proportions, the magnitude of which cannot be overlooked.
Another lawmaker requested the urgent intervention of the Senate on the siege on the residence of Supreme Court Judge Mary Odili by security agents.
The Senate is disturbed that 11 days after the incident, though the Inspector General of Police claims some arrests have been made and investigations are still going on, details of such arrests have not been made public. We urge the Inspector General of Police to make public the outcome of the investigations within 2 weeks.
I'm suggesting that instead of putting 2 weeks, we say thorough investigation and then he makes it public.
Lawmakers also waded into the impeachment of the Speaker of the Plateau State House of Assembly by 8 lawmakers, condemning the unconstitutional act and urging the Plateau State House of Assembly to be guided by the rule of law.
The Senate is disturbed of the alleged impeachment of the Speaker, Right Honorable Ayuba Abog, by 8 members of the House of Assembly, which falls short of the 2/3 constitutionally required number of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended.
Meanwhile, the Senate has approved President Muhammadu Buhari's latest loan request. The president had written to the Senate requesting approval to borrow the sum of $16.2 billion and €1 billion under the 2018 to 2020 external borrowing plan as well as a grant component of $125 million. The loan is to finance projects in the power sector, digital economy, industrial sector, education, transportation, as well as health, women affairs, and the environment.
We have not given approval, sir, to the terms and conditions. We have not seen that. We don't know what that is yet.
The Senate adds a provision to the approval, given that the terms and conditions of the loan from the funding agencies be forwarded to it for proper scrutiny and documentation. The Senate has passed through second reading a bill to amend the Niger Delta Development Act to include states which have attained the status of oil-producing states. Sponsor of the bill, Senator Solomon Olamilekon, said following the discovery of oil in Bauchi, Lagos and Ogun, these states have officially joined the League of Oil-Producing States, and by virtue of this, they are entitled to the 13% derivation due to oil-producing states according to the provision of Section 162, subsection 2 of the Constitution. But some lawmakers did not support the amendment of the NDDC Act.
Following the discovery of oil in Bauchi, Lagos, Ogun, these states have officially joined the League of Oil-Producing States in Nigeria. These states are entitled to the 13% derivation that is due to oil-producing states according to the provision of the Nigerian Constitution.
The issue is whether or not, the issue is whether or not, just because they're oil producing, they should come under the Niger Delta Development Commission. Mr. President, if you are ever looking for a meddlesome interloper, you don't have to go too far to find one. What this bill, this lead debate clearly shows that my colleague from Lagos here is a classic meddlesome interloper.
Let's take a quick look at the budget defense sessions this past week.
As the 2022 budget defense session gradually winds down in the National Assembly, the Minister of Justice, Mr. Abubakar Malami, was at the National Assembly to defend his ministry's budget. First appearing before the Senate Committee on Judiciary, Mr. Malami informed lawmakers about the federal government's plan to prevent a repeat of the Process and Industrial Development (P&ID) situation, which has led to a $10 billion dispute.
The Federal Executive Council, directed the Attorney General of the Federation to present a memo for the establishment of federal task force to review and validate contracts, judgments, and arbitral awards and implement the federal verification system to prevent abuses similar to the case of fee and ID.
Next, the minister appeared before the House of Representatives Committee on Justice, where he spoke on recoveries.
We are making efforts to ensure that we are allocated some cost of collection from recovered funds to finance our recovery operations in view of the fact that notwithstanding the billions being recovered by the Federal Ministry of Justice, not a cover provision is made as a cost of collection.
Lawmakers questioned the content of the proposed budget and some activities of the ministry.
The NSAS protest was never mentioned at all. This is an event that should take, the front burner in the issue of justice, rule of law, and our very democracy.
With the successes recorded in recovery of loot, Nigeria needs to know what had been recorded from who, what had been recovered.
Surprisingly, the committee chairman prevented the minister from responding to the questions.
If there's any further questions we have, then we can put it together on the letter they were inviting them. The Honorable Minister can take his name.
Further questions are denied as the minister was allowed to make his exit. The House of Representatives Committee on Customs is asking the Nigeria Customs to suspend banks owing the service from further collection of duties until their debts are cleared. According to the committee, so far from its investigation, 5 banks collectively owe the Nigeria Customs Service about 10 billion naira from customs duty collected, which are yet to be remitted to the accounts of customs. Chairman of the committee, Leke Abejide, stated that the agreement has been reached with the Nigeria Customs Service to ensure the implementation of this decision.
We are taking our final decision based on what is outstanding against you. As I told you when all of you were here, I had a meeting with the CGC, and the agreement is that all these banks that are owing, we should suspend them for some time from collection of duty, pending the time they are able to clear all this outstanding against them. It's either two-way. If it's either you deposit this money with them, or you are suspended pending the time you clear this outstanding.
The House of Representatives Committee on Disabilities says it is set to initiate a bill to enforce the UN Convention on Rights of Persons with Disability. According to the committee, the bill will aid full enforcement of the Act on Crimes Against Persons with Disability. The committee says it will also commence assessment of compliance to the Act, specifically provision of 5% employment quota to persons with disabilities in government agencies.
This committee has perfected plans to commence a bill for an act to ratify and enforce the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. This bill, when passed, and this convention, when ratified, will make it even easier for the full interment and enforcement of the Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Prohibition Act. We also use this medium to inform the public, MDAs, and the general public alike that the committee will soon commence its monitoring of performance and compliance of MDAs to the provisions of the Act. Chiefly is the 5% mandatory allocation of employment quota to persons with disabilities by all MDAs. And in view of that, this House is also sponsored a bill to amend the Federal Character Act to include the provision of the not less than 5% mandatory quota for persons with disability.
Well, that's it on The Gavel this week. Do send feedback to The Gavel at channelstv.com. I am Terry Ikumi. Goodbye.